With a federal election looming, 2019 may well be the year that Canada gets rid of Justin Trudeau. But the departure of the much-loathed carbon tax might take place earlier in the year. There are two cases coming up in the court calendar, one in Saskatchewan, the other in Ontario, where the respective provinces are putting a constitutional question to Justin Trudeau's carbon tax. This is, of course, the policy that Justin Trudeau wants to federally impose, a tax that will work up eventually to $50 per ton of emissions, something that will be a job killer, and we're already starting to see the implications and impacts of job-killing carbon taxes in Canada. The province of Saskatchewan is fighting this in court, saying basically that the federal government doesn't get to put its nose in what is supposed to be a provincial matter. That's the argument that Ontario is putting forward. But the interesting thing about this battle is that it used to be just Saskatchewan versus the country, and now Justin Trudeau is very much in the minority. Saskatchewan's against Trudeau's carbon tax. Alberta soon will be when Jason Kenney's the premier. Manitoba's against it. Ontario, PEI, New Brunswick. Trudeau is very quickly finding himself with only one ally, and that's British Columbia. Now, I love BC, but let's face it, they're not exactly the province we should be following on, well, pretty much anything. Now, what's interesting is that BC is intervening in the Saskatchewan case as well as the Ontario case. They're actually going to court to stand up for Justin Trudeau's carbon tax, saying that it is in fact federal jurisdiction because the fight against climate change has to be a national one rather than isolated provincial efforts. Saskatchewan will be arguing its case in just a couple of weeks' time, putting the question to the Saskatchewan Court of Appeals. Ontario will be intervening to support Saskatchewan's belief, and the reverse is going to be true as well. When Ontario has its carbon tax appeal in court in April, Saskatchewan will be intervening. The fact that we have these two separate cases going on in two separate provinces is indicative of the fact that this case is going to eventually wind its way up to the Supreme Court. But we still have to pay very close attention, not just to what happens in the courtrooms, but what arguments the federal government uses to justify this carbon tax. Remember, this isn't just about Justin Trudeau saying that he supports a tax on carbon and he supports the economic negative consequences. This is Justin Trudeau saying that individual provinces with democratically elected governments don't have the right to say no, that they don't have the right to determine their own economic and environmental policy. That's what's at stake here. So for the case coming up in Saskatchewan in just a couple of weeks, the way the federal government defends its position is likely to become the model for what happens in Ontario. These things likely to wind their way up to the Supreme Court. Now, of course, all of this is a moot point. If there are enough changes in government, including perhaps a change in the federal government that may reverse the carbon tax right then and there. But we can't hold out hope on that because we need a decisive decision that prevents any future government from being able to impose this top-down carbon tax its own way. This is a fight that we're not giving up. This isn't just about standing firm against job-killing carbon taxes. It's also about standing up for the right of individual provinces and their governments to determine their own policy directives. We can't be in this fight alone. We need your support. Join my Heritage Club by going to www.truenorthinitiative.com, and for just a small monthly contribution, support the work that my colleagues and I are doing here for you and your rights. For True North, I'm Andrew Lawton.